It began with a mass murder that shocked America. A son, in the middle of the night, killing his parents, his brothers, and his sisters, all while they slept. But the horror didn't end there. 1 year later, a new family moved into the same house, only to flee in terror less than a month later, claiming it was haunted by something evil. Was it a hoax, a haunting, or something far darker? This is the terrifying true story of the Amityville Horror. On the surface, it looks like just another house, a Dutch colonial home in the quiet suburb of Amityville, New York. But behind its walls lies one of the most disturbing stories in American history, a story that mixes brutal murder with claims of the supernatural. On the night of November 13, 1974, 23-year-old Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. shocked the nation. Armed with a rifle, he murdered his entire family while they slept. His parents, his 2 brothers, and his 2 sisters, 6 people in total, were found dead in their beds. DeFeo first tried to blame the killings on a mob hitman, but soon confessed. What unsettled investigators most was his explanation. He claimed that strange voices inside the house had urged him to kill. He was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But the horrors of 112 Ocean Avenue didn't end there. Just over a year later, in December 1975, the house was put back on the market. George and Kathy Lutz bought it for a shockingly low price and moved in with their 3 children. They only lasted 28 days. According to the Lutzes, the house was haunted by something dark and violent. They claimed they heard strange noises and phantom footsteps. Cold spots appeared without reason. Doors and windows slammed shut on their own. George would wake up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night, the same time the DeFeo murders occurred. Kathy reported terrifying visions. Their daughter claimed to see an imaginary friend named Jody, a pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. And in one of the most chilling claims, the family said a priest who came to bless the house heard a demonic voice roar, "Get out!" By January 1976, less than a month after moving in, the Lutz family abandoned the house, leaving nearly everything behind. Their story exploded in the media. In 1977, author Jay Anson released The Amityville Horror, a best-selling book that turned the haunting into an international sensation. 2 years later, Hollywood adapted the story into the 1979 film The Amityville Horror, launching a franchise of sequels, remakes, and spin-offs that continues to this day. But not everyone believed the Lutz family. Skeptics argue the haunting was a hoax, a way for the Lutzes to profit from the DeFeo murders. Some investigators found inconsistencies in their story. Others say there was no physical evidence of paranormal activity. Still, believers insist the house was cursed, that the violent murders left behind a dark energy that consumed everyone who entered. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue still stands. Whether you believe it was a genuine haunting, a tragic case of mass murder, or a carefully crafted hoax, the Amityville Horror remains one of the most infamous stories in American true crime and paranormal history. When The Exorcism of Emily Rose hit theaters in 2005, audiences were terrified. The movie told the story of a young woman who undergoes exorcisms while her health spirals out of control, ending in her tragic death. But what made the film even more disturbing is that it wasn't just fiction, it was inspired by a real case. That case was the story of Anneliese Michel, a 23-year-old woman from Germany, whose life ended after a series of controversial exorcisms in the 1970s. Anneliese was born in 1952 in Bavaria, into a strict Catholic family. By all accounts, she was a kind and intelligent young woman. But at the age of 16, she began experiencing strange health problems. She suffered seizures and was eventually diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. Doctors prescribed medication, but her symptoms worsened. Anneliese began experiencing hallucinations, claiming she saw demonic faces and heard voices damning her to hell. Despite medical treatment, nothing seemed to help. And as the years went on, her condition took on a darker, more spiritual form. By her early 20s, Annalise became convinced she was possessed by demons. She reported being unable to enter holy places, claimed to feel an invisible force pressing her down, and even drank her own urine in fits of compulsion. Her devout family also began to believe something supernatural was happening. They turned to the Catholic Church, begging for an exorcism. At first, the church refused, urging continued medical care. But after years of worsening symptoms and disturbing behavior, 2 priests were finally authorized to perform the rite of exorcism. Between September 1975 and July 1976, Annalise underwent 67 exorcism sessions, each lasting up to 4 hours. Audio recordings from these sessions still exist, where Annalise's voice is said to change, sounding guttural and inhuman. She claimed to be possessed not by one spirit, but by many, including Lucifer himself, Judas, and even Adolf Hitler. But while these rituals went on, her health collapsed. Annalise refused to eat, believing it was the demons preventing her. Over time, she grew severely malnourished and dehydrated. On July 1, 1976, Annalise Michel died in her home. She weighed just 68 pounds. The autopsy listed the cause of death as malnutrition and dehydration, compounded by the physical stress of the exorcisms. Her parents and the 2 priests were put on trial, charged with negligent homicide. The trial shocked the world. The defense argued that Annalise was truly possessed and that the exorcisms were necessary. The prosecution countered that she was mentally ill and should have been treated in a hospital. In the end, all 4 were found guilty and received suspended prison sentences, along with probation. The case of Annalise Michel remains one of the most famous and disturbing examples of alleged possession in modern times. To believers, she was a victim of genuine demonic forces, and her suffering was proof of the supernatural. To skeptics, she was a tragic young woman, failed by both her family and the medical system. Her story inspired the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which blended courtroom drama with chilling supernatural horror. But behind the Hollywood version lies the haunting reality of a young woman whose life ended far too soon, caught between faith, medicine, and mystery. In 2005, the Australian horror film Wolf Creek shocked audiences with its brutal story of backpackers falling victim to a sadistic killer in the outback. What many viewers didn't realize is that the movie was inspired by 2 of the most disturbing true crime cases in Australian history. Between 1989 and 1993, several young backpackers vanished while traveling along the Hume Highway in New South Wales. Police discovered the bodies of 7 victims buried in the Belanglo State Forest. The killer was Ivan Milat. Milat targeted hitchhikers and travelers, often offering them rides before abducting them. The victims were subjected to extreme violence before being murdered. In 1996, Milat was convicted of 7 murders and sentenced to life in prison, where he remained until his death in 2019. The case sent shockwaves across Australia and forever changed the way people viewed the safety of traveling through the outback. Another case that influenced Wolf Creek was the disappearance of British backpacker Peter Falconio in 2001. Falconio and his girlfriend, Joanne Lees, were traveling through the Northern Territory when they were flagged down by a stranger. Falconio was never seen again. Lees was assaulted but managed to escape into the desert and hide until help arrived. Eventually, police identified Bradley John Murdoch as the attacker. He was convicted of Falconio's murder in 2005, although Falconio's body has never been recovered. These 2 real cases were combined and fictionalized by director Greg McLean to create Wolf Creek. The film's villain, Mick Taylor, embodies traits of both Ivan Milat and Bradley Murdoch, a seemingly friendly bushman who lures travelers into trusting him before revealing his violent nature. The isolation of the Australian outback, the vulnerability of travelers, and the brutality of these crimes gave Wolf Creek a disturbing realism. While the film is a work of fiction, its roots lie in the darkest chapters of true crime history.